Sarah Bennett leaned against the sleek glass desk in her 32nd floor office at Horizon. Innovations, her fingers tracing the edge of a tablet, displaying the company's latest AI projections, while the city's neon glow pulsed beyond the windows. At 38, she was a titan in the tech world, her Harvard MBA an unrelenting drive, carving a path to CEO. In just 6 months, but the weight of leadership pressed harder than the tailored blazer. She wore her confidence, a shield against a past that still stung. A single mother to 12-year-old Liam, Sarah had learned to navigate life with a guarded heart. Horizon stood on the brink of unveiling an AI platform that could redefine global markets. But a shadow loomed over the triumph. Rumors of espionage had seeped into executive meetings like a slow poison. Security logs flagged unauthorized access to restricted zones late at night, someone lingering at executive workstations, and the name tied to the breaches was Mikhail Carter, the night janitor. Michael, 45, moved through Horizon's pristine halls. With a quiet grace, his faded navy uniform hanging loose on a frame etched by years of scraping by for his 9-year-old daughter, Sophie. To the corporate elite he was invisible, just a figure pushing a cleaning cart, but to his fellow maintenance workers, he was a quiet anchor, sharing coffee with the night crew, covering shifts for a sick colleague. His brown eyes, always lowered, caught the smallest details. Sarah's unease began during a late-night review of security footage, her pulse quickening as she watched. Michael paused in the AI lab, his weathered hands hesitating near a terminal displaying proprietary code. Why would a janitor with no recorded tech background access systems far beyond his role? At home, Liam's sullen focus on his gaming console mirrored Sarah's own isolation. She thought of Sophie, picturing a girl waiting in a modest apartment for a father who spent his nights erasing the messes of Horizon's elite, and the image stirred a pang of empathy she hadn't expected. Sarah's divorce had taught her to trust data over people, but something about Michael's quiet diligence challenged her instincts. Was he a threat to Horizon's future, or a puzzle she'd yet to solve? Determined to uncover the truth, she resolved to shadow him after his next shift, her mind torn between the need to protect her company and a growing curiosity about the man who moved through her world unseen. As she drove Liam to school the next morning, his voice cut through her thoughts. "Mum, why do you always look so worried?" Her answer came softly, "Because some risks can't be calculated." That night she sat alone in her office, the hum of the city below a stark contrast to the silence of her suspicions. She replayed the footage of Michael, his careful steps through the lab, his glance at a screen. He shouldn't understand, and wondered what drove him. Was he selling secrets to a competitor, or was there something else, something her years of corporate battles hadn't prepared her for? She thought of her own sacrifices, the late nights that kept her from Liam's school plays, the walls she'd built to protect herself from betrayal. Michael's life, so different from hers, felt like a mirror reflecting her own choices back at her. She recalled a moment from the previous week, catching his reflection in a conference room's glass as he polished it, his eyes briefly meeting hers, before dropping away, a flicker of something intelligent, unguarded. It wasn't the look of a thief, but of someone carrying a weight as heavy as her own. Sarah made a decision she'd follow Michael herself, slipping out of her executive armor into jeans and a hoodie kept for emergencies, her heart racing with the thrill of uncovering truth. As she tucked Liam into bed, his small hand lingered on hers. "Mum, be careful." Her nod was firm, but inside she wondered if she was chasing a traitor or something far more human. The janitor who cleaned her office each night had become the key to a mystery she couldn't ignore, and as she prepared to trail him into the night, she felt the first stirrings of a truth that might change more than just Horizon's future. Sarah Bennett sat in her darkened sedan, 3 cars behind Michael Carter's battered pickup truck, her heart thudding as she followed him through the city's quieter streets, the neon glow of Horizon innovations fading in her rearview mirror. The decision to trail him felt reckless for a CEO, accustomed to boardroom battles, but the security footage of McHugh lingering in the AI lab, his hands too deliberate for a janitor's routine, had ignited a need for answers she couldn't delegate. At 38, her life was a fortress of spreadsheets and suspicion, built on the rubble of a marriage that had crumbled under lies, but tonight she was stepping into the unknown, driven by a mix of duty to her company and an unshakable curiosity about the man she'd barely noticed until now. Michael's truck weaved through working-class neighborhoods, where streetlights flickered and storefronts bore faded signs so different from the polished world of Horizon's campus. Sarah's mind raced. Was he meeting a contact to sell stolen Code, or was there another explanation for his late-night access to restricted systems? His employee file had offered no clues, just a stark outline of a widower scraping by for his daughter, Sophie, yet his careful movements suggested a mind sharper than his minimum wage role implied. As Michael pulled into the cracked parking lot of a rundown building with a weathered sign reading, Eastside Community Hub, Sarah's pulse quickened. She parked at a distance, her breath catching as he retrieved a worn backpack from his truck and disappeared inside the dimly lit structure. Waiting 5 minutes to avoid detection, she slipped out of her car, the cool night air sharpening her senses as she approached the building, her sneakers silent on the pavement. Through a smudged window she saw Michael arranging laptops on folding tables in a cramped room, filled with teenagers and younger children, their faces a mosaic of hope and hardship. He greeted each by name, his voice steady and warm, a stark contrast to the reserved figure who pushed a cleaning cart at Horizon. Sarah eased into the hallway, the faint hum of fluorescent lights mingling with the sound of Michael's instruction. You've got the basics of loops, now let's build a program that solves a real problem, like tracking donations for the food pantry. She peered around the doorframe, her breath catching as she saw him at a whiteboard sketching a flowchart, with confident strokes, his hands now guiding young minds instead of mopping floors. The children, mostly from immigrant and low-income families, typed eagerly, some in patched clothes, their focus unbroken as Michael moved between them, offering quiet encouragement. A girl, no older than 14, raised her hand. "Mr. Carter, can we make the program sort donations by date?" To Michael's nod was patient. "That's a great idea. Aisha, let's plan the logic together." Sarah's mind reeled. The man she'd suspected of corporate espionage was teaching advanced coding to kids who likely couldn't afford a computer at home. She slipped into an adjacent room, her heart still pounding, and saw a stack of refurbished laptops, their cables neatly coiled, evidence of Michael's care. A faded photo on the wall caught her eye, a younger Michael with a woman and a toddler. Sophie smiling at a park, and the sight stirred an ache Sarah hadn't felt in years, a reminder of her own fractured family. Liam's laughter now confined to his gaming headset. She thought of the security logs, the grainy footage of Michael slipping something into his pocket after accessing a server room. Was it possible he was taking discarded equipment to bring here? The idea clashed with her suspicions, but fit the scene before her, a man giving time and resources to a community Horizon's executives rarely acknowledged. As the class ended, Sarah lingered in the shadows, watching Michael pack up his materials. His face softened in a way she'd never seen at work. A boy no older than Liam approached, clutching a notebook. "Thanks for helping with my code, Mr. Carter. I showed my mum, and she said I could be an engineer someday." Michael's smile was small but genuine. "Keep practicing, Jamal. You're already halfway there." Sarah's throat tightened, the warmth in his voice so different from the guarded janitor she knew stirred a flicker of guilt for assuming the worst. She stepped back as Michael headed toward the exit, her mind a tangle of questions. Was he a threat, or a man quietly rebuilding lives with scraps Horizon discarded? She drove home in silence, the city's lights blurring as she thought of Liam asleep in his room, unaware of her absence, just as Sophie likely waited for Michael in their modest apartment. The contrast between her sleek suburban home and the community hub's peeling paint lingered in her mind, a reminder of the worlds she'd ignored in her climb to the top. Sarah knew she needed more answers. Michael's past, his motives, his connection to Horizon's systems, but tonight she'd seen a side of him that challenged her instincts. Tomorrow she'd dig deeper, pulling records and cross-referencing his access logs. But for now, the image of those children, their eyes bright with possibility, stayed with her, a quiet rebuke to the walls she'd built around her trust. Sarah Bennett sat at her kitchen table the next morning, her coffee growing cold as she stared at her laptop, the screen glowing with fragmented records of Michael Carter's past, pieced together from old industry articles and public databases. The night at the Eastside Community Hub had left her unsettled, the image of Michael teaching coding to kids from forgotten neighborhoods clashing with the security footage of him lingering in Horizon's AI lab, a puzzle that refused to resolve. At 38, Sarah had built her career on instincts, sharpened by betrayal, her ex-husband's infidelity teaching her to trust data over people. Yet the warmth in Michael's voice as he guided those children hinted at a truth her spreadsheets couldn't capture. Determined to understand the man she'd suspected of espionage, she'd tasked her assistant with digging deeper into his history, bypassing Horizon's sparse employee file for answers that might explain his actions. The results were staggering. Michael Carter was once Matthew Carter, a rising AI engineer at Quantum Dynamics, a competitor Horizon had outmaneuvered years ago. Articles from a decade past painted him as a prodigy, his algorithms foundational too early. AI systems, but his career had imploded after he exposed dangerous flaws in Quantum's healthcare. AI software flaws that risked patient lives. The whisk cost him everything. A lawsuit against Quantum's CEO ended in a modest settlement, but left him blacklisted, his name erased from industry circles. Shortly after, his wife Emily died of leukemia, leaving him to raise Sophie alone, and forcing him into low-wage jobs like the one at Horizon. Sarah leaned back, her chest tight with the weight of his story. A man who'd sacrificed his future for ethics, now reduced to cleaning floors for the company that profited from his early work. She thought of Liam sleeping upstairs, his world so different from Sophie's, yet both children tethered to parents carrying unseen burdens. That afternoon, Sarah returned to the community hub, this time in daylight, her presence drawing curious glances from volunteers as she introduced herself not as Horizon's CEO, but as a parent interested in their programs. The director, Maria, warm woman in her 60s, beamed as she described their mission to serve low-income families, many of them immigrants working multiple jobs. Michael's coding classes have changed everything, Maria said, leading Sarah through a cramped room where kids' drawings hung beside donated monitors. He finds old tech, fixes it, and teaches these kids skills they'd never get otherwise. Sarah's eyes lingered on a refurbished laptop, its casing scratched but functional, and she pictured Michael salvaging it from Horizon's discard pile, not stealing secrets but breathing life into forgotten machines. Maria showed her a wall of student projects, simple apps for tracking community resources built by teenagers who'd barely touched a computer before Michael's classes. One caught Sarah's eye, a food distribution tracker credited to a 15-year-old named Aisha, the same girl she'd seen asking questions the night before. It's not just coding, Maria added softly. He gives them hope, a way out of cycles most of these families can't break. Sarah nodded, her mind flashing to Liam, his potential dulled by her long hours and their strained connection, and she wondered if Michael's work with Sophie was as patient as what she'd witnessed. As they passed a small office, Sarah glimpsed Michael helping an elderly man navigate a video call, his voice gentle as he explained the interface. "This will let you see your daughter in Mexico every week, Mr. Alvarez." The man's gratitude was palpable, and Sarah felt a pang of recognition. Her own mother lived across the country there, calls rare and stilted by years of distance. She stepped outside to clear her head, the hub's faded exterior, a stark contrast to Horizon's glass towers. Yet its warmth lingered in her, a challenge to the cold efficiency she'd mastered. Back at home that evening, Liam's voice broke through her thoughts as he pushed peas around his plate. "Mum, why don't we ever do stuff like we used to?" His words, a quiet echo of the joy she'd seen in the hub's children. She wanted to promise him more time, more connection, but the looming AI launch and Michael's mystery consumed her. Was he using Horizon's systems to gather equipment for the hub, or was there still a risk he was leaking data? The answer lay in his past, a man who'd chosen principles over ambition, only to be erased for it. Sarah's suspicion hadn't vanished, but it was now tangled with respect for the life he'd built from ashes. She decided to observe him at work that night, slipping into Horizon after hours, her casual clothes blending with the shadows as she watched him clean a conference room, his movements precise yet weary. When he paused near a developer's desk, adjusting a monitor to prevent glare rather than touching the open code, Sarah's breath caught his care, wasn't that of a thief, but of someone who understood technology's value. Driving home, she thought of Sophie waiting for Michael in their small apartment, and of Liam waiting for her to be more than a CEO. Michael's story had cracked something in her, a reminder that trust, though fragile, could reveal truths her suspicions had obscured. She needed to know more, not just to protect Horizon, but to understand the man whose quiet strength was reshaping her view of what mattered. The air in Horizon Innovation's executive boardroom crackled with tension as Sarah Bennett stood before her senior technical team, her voice steady but her mind racing with the weight of a crisis that threatened to unravel everything she'd built. 3 days before the AI platform's launch, a critical bug had surfaced in the software's decision-making core, a flaw that could crash the system under high loads, costing millions in revenue and Horizon's hard-won reputation. Her engineers argued over fixes, each solution too slow or too risky, and Sarah felt the familiar grip of control slipping her years as CEO, teaching her that trust in others was a luxury she rarely afforded. Yet her thoughts kept drifting to Michael Carter, the janitor, whose hidden past as an AI engineer had upended her assumptions, his quiet competence at the Eastside Community Hub hinting at a mind that might hold answers her team lacked. She'd watched him last night at Horizon, his hands adjusting a developer's monitor with care, not theft, and the memory pushed her to act on instinct that felt both reckless and right. Stepping into the hallway where Michael was emptying a trash bin, his navy uniform blending into the shadows, she called his name, her tone sharp enough to startle a nearby intern. "Michael, can I have a word?" He followed her to a quiet corner, his expression guarded but his brown eyes steady in a way that reminded her of the teacher she'd seen inspiring kids. "You were Matthew Carter at Quantum Dynamics," she said without preamble, "a lead engineer on AI systems like the one we're building." His silence confirmed it, and she pressed on. "We're facing a failure in the decision-making algorithm. I need to know if you can help." For a long moment, Michael studied her, his posture stiff as if weighing the cost of stepping back into a world that had burned him, but then he nodded. "Show me the diagnostics." In her office, Sarah pulled up the error logs on her monitor, the screen, a maze of code that had stumped her best minds. Michael leaned in his focus, shifting from janitor to engineer, with a subtle straightening of his shoulders, his fingers moving over the keyboard with a precision that belied his years of cleaning floors. "This isn't just the decision layer," he murmured, after minutes of silence. "It's a memory allocation flaw in the core framework, a ghost from early designs I worked on at Quantum." Sarah's breath caught. The framework Horizon used was built on acquired technology, Michael's technology, and the realization hit her. Like a wave, he wasn't a threat, but a key to their survival. "Can you fix it?" she asked, her voice softer now, aware of the trust she was extending. He nodded slowly. "It's possible, but I'd need access to the full codebase, and time we don't have." Sarah made a split-second decision. "Come with me," leading him back to the boardroom, where her team's arguments fell silent as the janitor entered their stunned faces, reflecting her own disbelief from days ago. "This is Michael Carter," she announced, ignoring their skepticism. "He designed the original framework our AI is built on, and he's identified the issue for the next 48 hours. He's consulting with us." The CTO, James, a man who'd dismissed Michael as invisible, scoffed. "You're trusting a janitor with our launch." Sarah's gaze was steel. "Michael was writing AI architecture while you were still debugging basic scripts, James. I suggest you listen." Michael worked through the night alongside engineers who shifted from doubt to grudging respect as he pinpointed the flaw, a cascading error triggered by scaling demands, and proposed a streamlined fix that optimized the system beyond its original design. Sarah watched from the sidelines, her admiration growing as Michael navigated complex code with ease, his quiet corrections guiding the team like he did the kids at the hub. By dawn, the fix was in place, tested and stable, the launch back on track. As the team dispersed, bleary-eyed but relieved, Sarah caught Michael's eye, his exhaustion mirrored hers, but there was something else, a flicker of pride he'd buried for years. She thought of Liam asleep at home, unaware of the crisis she'd faced, and of Sophie waiting for Michael in their modest apartment, both children tied to parents who carried unseen weight. "Thank you," she said softly, as they stood alone in the boardroom. "I misjudged you." Michael's smile was faint. "You saw what most don't. That's enough." The moment lingered, a bridge between their worlds built on trust she hadn't expected to offer. Driving home, Sarah felt the weight of the night settle, not just the saved launch, but the realization that Michael's expertise had been there all along, hidden by her own blind spots. She thought of the hub, the kids he taught, the hope he gave, and wondered how many others like him Horizon had overlooked. The crisis had passed, but its aftermath left her questioning not just her company's future, but her own hardened edges, softened by a man who'd lost everything, yet still gave. She needed to see him again, not as a suspect or a savior, but as someone whose story was rewriting hers. The morning after Horizon Innovations' AI launch, Sarah Bennett stood in the company's glass-walled atrium, addressing a sea of employees. From developers in hoodies to maintenance staff in navy uniforms, her voice carrying a conviction that felt new, even to herself. The launch had succeeded not just on schedule, but with unexpected efficiencies thanks to Michael Carter, the janitor turned savior, whose expertise had salvaged their flagship product from collapse. At 38, Sarah had always measured success in market share and stock prices, but Michael's quiet heroism at the Eastside Community Hub and his selfless dive into Horizon's crisis had shifted something deep within her, a crack in the armor she'd worn since her divorce left her trusting only herself. She scanned the crowd, her eyes finding Michael at the back, his worn uniform unchanged despite his pivotal role, his posture stiff as if he'd rather be anywhere else. "Today isn't just about our launch," she told the room, "it's about recognizing value where we've been blind." Michael Carter saved us not because of his title, but because of his knowledge and character. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some of surprise, others of respect, and Sarah seized the moment. "Mr. Carter, I'd like to offer you a senior technical role, effective immediately, a chance to reclaim the career you were denied." The room held its breath, but Michael's expression remained steady, his voice low but clear. "Thank you, Ms. Bennett, but I can't accept. My work at the community hub matters more. Those kids need me in ways a corner office never will." Sarah's heart sank, not from rejection but from the weight of his choice, a man who'd lost everything to principles, yet chose purpose over prestige. She recovered quickly, then let Horizon support that work. "I propose a partnership. We'll fund a tech education program at the Eastside Hub with you as its director, equipment, curriculum, internships, all backed by our resources." Michael hesitated, his eyes searching hers for hidden agendas, but then he nodded. "I'd be honored to lead that." The room erupted in applause, and Sarah felt a warmth she hadn't known in years, a sense that she was building something beyond profit. Over the next weeks, the partnership took shape. Horizon's donations transformed the hub with new laptops, a renovated classroom, and a pipeline for student internships. Sarah visited often at first to oversee the investment, but soon, because the hub's energy drew her in a stark contrast to the sterile efficiency of her corporate world. One evening she arrived to find Michael teaching a class that included Liam, her son, who'd begged to join after hearing about Sophie's coding projects. Watching Liam laugh as he debugged a program with Sophie, Sarah felt a pang of connection, her son's enthusiasm mirroring the spark she'd lost in years of boardroom battles. Michael approached as the class ended, his demeanor softer here than at Horizon. "Liam's got a knack for problem solving. He said he built a game loop today that stumped even me." Sarah smiled, surprised by her own lightness. "He's never shown much interest in my work, maybe because it's all numbers and no fun." Michael's chuckle was warm. "Add some spaceships, and he'd run your next board meeting." The ease of their exchange caught her off guard. Two single parents shaped by loss, finding common ground in their children's joy. As weeks passed, Sarah and Michael's collaboration deepened, their meetings moving from corporate agendas to late-night talks about the hub's future and the kids who thrived there. Sarah noticed Michael's quiet leadership, how he mentored students with the same care he showed Sophie, never raising his voice but commanding attention through patience. It was so different from her own decisive style, yet she saw its power in the teenagers who now built apps for local businesses, and in Liam, who began asking her about coding over dinner. One night, as they reviewed internship plans at the hub, Sarah shared a memory of her own early days tinkering with computers before ambition hardened her edges. "I forgot how much I loved creating." Michael nodded, his eyes holding hers. "Sometimes loss makes us forget what we're capable of." The moment lingered, a bridge between their guarded hearts, built on shared sacrifice. Sarah thought of Liam asleep at home, his growing confidence a mirror to the hub's students, and of Sophie, whose drawings now decorated Michael's small office. Their partnership was changing more than the community, it was softening the walls Sarah had built, reshaping her view of strength. At a community event, she saw Michael kneel beside a shy boy, helping him present a simple website to proud parents, and the sight stirred a memory of Liam's first school project, one she'd missed for a board meeting. Driving home, she glanced at Liam in the passenger seat, his chatter about coding filled with a joy she hadn't nurtured alone. Michael's work had given her son a spark, and given her a glimpse of a life beyond metrics. As she tucked Liam in, he hugged her, a rare gesture. "Mom, this is the best summer ever. Can Sophie come over to code this weekend?" Sarah's heart swelled. "Sure, kiddo," and the promise felt like a step toward something new, not just for Liam but for her. The Eastside Community Hub buzzed with life on the evening of its grand reopening, the once dilapidated building now a beacon of possibility. Its walls lined with student projects, and its new tech lab gleaming with Horizon innovations donated. Equipment. Sarah Bennett stood at a podium, her tailored blazer softened by a smile that felt unfamiliar, yet genuine as she addressed a crowd of families. Nexus employees and local leaders, her voice carrying a warmth honed by months of change. At 38 she'd once defined success through stock prices and market dominance, but the partnership with Michael Carter, the former janitor whose brilliance had saved Horizon's AI launch and reshaped her perspective, had shown her a deeper measure of impact. Michael stood at the room's edge, his navy uniform replaced by a simple button-down, his discomfort with attention evident in his crossed arms, but his eyes bright with pride as children showed off apps they'd coded under his guidance. "This lab," Sarah said, gesturing to the space named the Michael Carter Technology Lab against his protests, "isn't just about technology. It's about second chances for kids, for communities, for all of us who've forgotten what potential looks like when it's given room to grow." The crowd applauded, and Sarah caught Michael's gaze, a flicker of gratitude passing between them, a silent acknowledgement of the journey from suspicion to alliance. She recounted how Horizon's investment had expanded the hub's reach, new classrooms, more equipment, a waiting list of kids now empty, and how Michael's leadership had turned teenagers into coders and dreamers into doers. Aisha, the 15-year-old whose food distribution app had impressed Sarah months ago, stepped forward presenting Michael with a handmade plaque, its words simple yet profound, "For the man who believed in us first." Michael's throat bobbed as he accepted it, his usual reserve cracking just enough to reveal the weight of the moment. Sarah stepped down, joining him as families mingled, their children, including Liam and Sophie, racing between stations to demo their projects. Watching Liam explain a game he'd built with Sophie, Sarah felt a tug at her heart, her son's confidence, a gift she hadn't given alone. Michael's work had reached beyond the hub, touching her own life, softening the edges hardened by years of betrayal and ambition. Later, as the crowd thinned, Sarah found Michael outside the hub, staring at a wooden sign that read Eastside Technology and Community Development Center, a name she'd insisted on to reflect its expanded mission. "Your idea?" he asked, his voice low but warm, recognizing her influence. "Some things deserve to be named," she replied, their eyes meeting with a shared understanding of what they'd built together, not just a program but a bridge between their worlds. The moment stretched fragile and new, and Sarah felt the stirrings of something personal, a connection rooted in their shared losses as single parents and their rediscovered hope. Liam and Sophie interrupted, pelting them with plans for a coding sleepover, their laughter uncomplicated by the adults' complex history. As they walked to their cars parked side by side, Sarah's luxury sedan next to Michael's weathered pickup, she mentioned Horizon's board approving 5 new tech hubs across the region. "We'll need someone to oversee them, someone who gets both the tech and the people." Michael paused, his hand on his car door. "I'll consider it, if you'll join us for the community picnic next weekend. Liam and Sophie would love it." The invitation hung between them, a step beyond professional partnership, and Sarah's smile came easily. "We'd like that." Driving home with Liam's chatter filling the car, Sarah reflected on the transformation that had begun with a grainy security feed and a reckless decision to follow a janitor. She'd expected to uncover a traitor, but found a man whose quiet strength had challenged her to see value beyond titles. The hub's success was measurable: 32% increase in community engagement, 20 students in Horizon's internship pipeline, but its true impact was in the faces of kids like Aisha, in Liam's newfound spark, in the way Sarah now lingered at home listening to her son, instead of burying herself in reports. Michael too had changed, his guarded demeanor softening with each class he taught, his past no longer a shadow but a foundation for the lives he was shaping. As Sarah pulled into her driveway, she glanced at Liam asleep in the passenger seat, his tablet clutched like a treasure, and thought of Sophie likely dreaming of code in her own small bed. The distance between their worlds, once vast, now felt bridgeable, a path forged by trust and purpose. At the next board meeting, Sarah would defend the hub's funding not as charity but as investment in talent overlooked by systems that valued credentials over character, a lesson Michael had taught her without a single lecture. Their partnership, professional at its core, was edging towards something deeper: dinners at the hub, turning into shared stories of single parenthood, laughter over Liam and Sophie's coding rivalries, a cautious dance of two people learning to trust again. As she stepped into her quiet house, Sarah caught her reflection in the hall mirror, her face less guarded than it had been 6 months ago. The The story of Horizon and the hub of Michael and herself wasn't finished. It was just beginning, a design, still unfolding, built on second chances and the courage to see beyond first impressions.